The flash drive hit Michael's desk at 11:47 p.m. like a bomb. Charlie stood in Batman pajamas, eyes heavy with sleep. "Dad, I need this tomorrow. My project's on there." Michael grabbed the small device. "What project?" "About jobs. I filmed everyone. You at work, Mom at her office, Uncle Justin too." Michael's spine went rigid. Justin Rice, the smooth lawyer who'd been showing up at their house whenever Michael traveled for contracts, always with some excuse about helping Nicolette with legal matters. "When did you film Justin?" Charlie rubbed his eyes. "Last week, in your office. He said I could film him for school." Michael plugged in the drive with trembling fingers. The first videos showed Charlie interviewing construction workers at the harbor project. Normal kid stuff. Workers explaining how cranes operated, how concrete got mixed. Then the timestamp jumped to last Tuesday, 9:47 p.m. Michael had been in Portland that night, reviewing plans for the new waterfront development. 3-day trip. He'd called Nicolette from his hotel room around 10, told her he loved her. On screen, Justin Rice stood in Michael's private office like he owned the place. 2 months and the board flips, Justin said directly into Charlie's camera. The moron doesn't realize he's handing us the entire company. Michael's world exploded. Justin moved to Michael's filing cabinets, opened them with keys that only Michael and Nicolette possessed. He photographed contracts with his phone, copied financial data to USB drives, opened the wall safe behind Michael's engineering degree. "Hey there, sport," Justin suddenly noticed Charlie filming. "Maybe we shouldn't record in here anymore, okay? This is private grown-up business." "Okay, Uncle Justin, are you helping Daddy?" Justin's smile was poison. Something like that. The video ended. Michael stared at the black screen. 23 years. Started as a site foreman with hands that bled from handling rebar. Worked nights to get his engineering degree, nights to get his architecture license. Built Ender's engineering group from nothing. 400 employees now, 42 million in assets. Government contracts worth 80 million over the next 5 years. And his wife was giving it all to another man. Charlie yawned. "Can I have my drive back?" "Tomorrow, buddy. Go to bed. But my presentation, I'll handle it." Charlie trudged upstairs. Michael sat alone in his home office, rain hammering the windows of the house he'd designed and built with his own hands. The house where he'd thought he was safe. He played the video again. Watched Justin steal his life's work. Watched his own son unknowingly document the greatest betrayal imaginable. Michael's phone buzzed. Text from Nicolette. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Working late. Right." He called his security company. "This is Michael Enders. I need access logs for my building. Past 6 months. Everything." "Mr. Enders, it's almost midnight." "I don't care. Send them now." The logs arrived in his email 10 minutes later. Michael opened the spreadsheet, scrolled through months of data. There. Justin Rice. Badge access 17 times in the past 3 months. Always when Michael was traveling. Always in the evening. September 15th, 8:23 p.m. Michael was in Tacoma that night. September 28th, 9:45 p.m. Michael was in Vancouver. October 8th, 10:12 p.m. Michael was in Spokane. Every single time, Justin had been alone in Michael's office while Michael was hundreds of miles away, trusting his wife to keep their home and business safe. Michael poured 3 fingers of bourbon. Then he made a call. Daniel Webb Law Offices. "I need to speak to Daniel. It's Michael Enders." "Mr. Enders, it's after midnight." "Put him on the phone. Now." 2 minutes later, Daniel's groggy voice came through the speaker. "Michael? What's wrong?" "I think my wife is planning to steal my company." Silence. Then, "Come to my office, 6 a.m. And Michael, don't say anything to Nicolette until we talk." Michael hung up. He sat in his chair until dawn, watching the rain streak down windows, planning his next moves like the engineer he was, calculating loads and stresses and failure points. By morning, he knew exactly what he had to do. Daniel Webb's office overlooked Elliott Bay. At 6 a.m., the harbor was already busy with cargo ships and ferries. Michael sat across from the attorney who'd handled his business contracts for 15 years. "Show me," Daniel said. Michael played Charlie's video on Daniel's laptop. Daniel's face darkened as he watched Justin rifle through Michael's office. "This is industrial espionage," Daniel said. "Corporate theft. But we need more evidence before we can move." "What kind of evidence?" "Documentation of what he's stealing. Proof of conspiracy. I know someone who can help." Elena Vasquez arrived 30 minutes later. Former FBI cybercrime specialist, now running her own corporate security firm. Dark hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing, handshake like a vice. "I've seen this before," she said after watching the video. "Corporate raiders targeting successful family businesses. They get close to the wife, convince her the husband is incompetent, then steal everything through legal manipulation." Michael felt sick. How long does it usually take? 6 months to 2 years, depends on how much assets are involved. Elena opened her laptop. "I can install monitoring software on your home and office networks, track their communications. But I need your authorization to go deeper." "What does that mean?" "Breaking into their systems. It's legally gray, but it's the only way to get ahead of them." Daniel leaned forward. "Michael, if we're going to stop this, we need to know their complete plan. How they're planning to steal your assets, when they're planning to move, what legal strategy they'll use." Michael thought about Nicolette, the woman he'd married 12 years ago, the woman who'd stood beside him as he built his company from nothing, the woman who'd given birth to Charlie in the same hospital where Michael's father had gone. "Do it," he said. Elena's fingers flew across her keyboard. "I'm installing monitoring software now. We'll be able to track every email, every phone call, every document they access." She paused. "But Michael, once we start this, there's no going back. You're going to learn things about your wife that will destroy your marriage forever." "My marriage is already destroyed. I just didn't know it yet." Elena nodded. "Okay, let's see how deep this goes." The monitoring software went live that afternoon. Within hours, they were intercepting communications between Nicolette and Justin, between Nicolette and her father, Craig Belmont, between Justin and offshore banking contacts in the Cayman Islands. Michael sat in Daniel's office that evening, reading transcripts of his wife's betrayal. Email from Nicolette to Justin, sent 3 hours ago. "Michael suspects something. He was asking about your visits to the office." Justin's response: "Stay calm. We're too close to stop now. 2 more weeks and everything transfers." Email from Craig Belmont to Nicolette: "The Cayman accounts are ready. Once the assets transfer, Justin can wire everything offshore. Michael will never be able to touch it." Nicolette's response: "What about Charlie?" Craig: "We'll get custody. Michael's work schedule proves he's an absent father. Justin's psych evaluation report will show Michael's unstable." Michael's hands shook as he read. Psych evaluation. Elena pulled up another document. "Dr. Morrison, psychiatrist in Bellevue. He's been taking payments from a shell company controlled by Justin." "For what?" "To declare you mentally incompetent. They're planning to have you committed, Michael. Once you're in psychiatric hold, they can claim emergency control of your assets." Daniel slammed his fist on the desk. "These people aren't just thieves. They're trying to destroy your life completely." Michael stared out at the harbor lights, cargo ships moving through the darkness, carrying goods to distant ports. He'd built bridges for some of those ports, roads that connected cities, infrastructure that would last decades. But his marriage wouldn't last another week. "What's their timeline?" Elena consulted her laptop. "Based on their communications, they're planning to move next Friday, file transfer documents with the state, execute the psychiatric hold on Monday. By the time you're released from psychiatric evaluation, everything you own will be gone." "How do we stop them?" Daniel smiled grimly. "We turn their plan against them. But first, we need to set a trap." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Michael would announce a business trip to Vancouver, a 3-day inspection of the new waterfront project, but instead of leaving Seattle, he'd stay in a downtown hotel while Elena monitored Justin's activities. "He'll come to your office," Elena predicted. "He needs to access your computer systems to complete the asset transfers. We'll record everything." That evening, Michael went home to Bellevue. Nicolette was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked beautiful in the soft light, her dark hair falling across her shoulders as she chopped vegetables. For a moment, Michael almost forgot what he'd learned, almost convinced himself this was all a mistake. Then she smiled at him, and he saw the lie behind her eyes. "How was your day?" she asked. "Productive. I've got a trip to Vancouver next week. 3 days. Her knife paused for just a fraction of a second. "Oh? When?" "Tuesday through Thursday. Big client meeting. Could be worth 10 million. Nicolette's eyes brightened with genuine excitement. "That's wonderful. I'll need to leave early Tuesday morning. Won't be back until Thursday night." "Of course. Charlie and I will be fine." Michael watched her face carefully. No guilt, no hesitation. Just calculating excitement as she realized she'd have 3 days to complete her theft. Charlie bounded into the kitchen, soccer cleats muddy from practice. "Dad, Coach says I'm starting next game. Michael hugged his son, inhaling the scent of grass and childhood innocence. That's great, buddy. Will you be there? Wouldn't miss it. But even as he said it, Michael wondered if he'd still be a free man by the time of Charlie's game. If Justin's psychiatric evaluation would put him in a locked ward instead of the soccer sidelines. Dinner passed in surreal normalcy. Charlie talked about school. Nicolette mentioned a charity auction next week. Michael nodded and smiled and played the role of the oblivious husband. After Charlie went to bed, Nicolette poured wine. They sat in the living room they'd furnished together, surrounded by photos of happier times. You seem tense tonight, she said. Just work stress. The Vancouver project is complex. Maybe you should consider bringing in a partner, someone to handle the administrative side while you focus on engineering. Michael's stomach twisted. Like who? Well, Justin has expressed interest. He understands the construction industry better than most lawyers. Has he? We've discussed it. He thinks Ender's engineering has tremendous growth potential. Michael sipped his wine, tasting betrayal. When have you discussed this? Over lunch, a few times. He's very insightful about business development. Michael wanted to ask how many lunches, how many times she'd plotted his destruction over appetizers and wine, but he couldn't tip his hand. I'll think about it, he said. Tuesday morning arrived gray and drizzling. Michael packed his bags, kissed Nicolette goodbye, hugged Charlie. Bring me something from Canada, Charlie said. I will, buddy. Michael drove to the airport, went through security, then doubled back through a different exit. By noon, he was checked into the Westin downtown, 20 floors above street level, with a clear view of Ender's engineering headquarters. Elena had set up surveillance equipment in the hotel room, high-powered cameras with telephoto lenses aimed at Michael's office windows, electronic monitoring equipment that could intercept cell phone calls within a half-mile radius. Now we wait, Elena said. They didn't wait long. At 2:30 p.m., Justin's silver Mercedes pulled into the Ender's engineering parking garage. Elena's cameras tracked him through the lobby, into the elevator, down the hall to Michael's corner office. He's using his own badge, Elena noted. Nicolette must have gotten him authorized access. On the surveillance monitors, Justin moved through Michael's office like he owned it. He went straight to Michael's computer, inserted a USB drive, began copying files. Financial records, Elena said, watching through binoculars. Client contracts, proprietary engineering software. Then, Justin opened Michael's wall safe, the safe that only Nicolette knew the combination to. How does he? Michael started. She gave it to him, had to. Justin pulled backup drives from the safe, drives containing 20 years of proprietary engineering data, structural calculations worth millions, software that Michael's team had developed over decades. Elena's electronic equipment crackled. He's making a call. Justin's voice came through the speakers. It's done. I have everything we need. Nicolette's voice responded. Perfect. The transfer documents are ready. We file them tomorrow. What about the Vancouver trip? Michael called from the airport. He's safely out of town. Michael's hands clenched into fists as he listened to his wife coordinate his destruction. What about the psych evaluation? Justin asked. Dr. Morrison is standing by. Once Michael gets back Thursday, we'll have him picked up for emergency evaluation. 72-hour hold minimum. And the boy? Craig's already filed for emergency custody. Claims Michael's been erratic, unstable. We have photos of him drinking alone, staying up all night in his office. Michael remembered those nights, the stress of managing major projects, the weight of 400 employees depending on him. Nicolette had encouraged him to unwind with a drink, had photographed him without his knowledge. By the time Michael gets out of psychiatric hold, Nicolette continued, everything will be transferred to Belmont Development. He'll be broke and legally incompetent. Elena shut off the recording equipment. We have everything we need. What's the next step? We call the FBI. But Elena wasn't finished monitoring. Wait, he's making another call. Justin's voice crackled through the speakers again. Craig, it's me. I'm in his office now. Yes, I have the patent files. The offshore accounts are ready? They couldn't hear Craig's response, but Justin nodded. Perfect. By Friday, Michael Enders won't own anything but debt, and the psychiatric hold will ensure he can't fight back legally. Elena activated another recorder. Michael, they're not just stealing your company. They're planning to destroy you completely, make it impossible for you to ever recover. How? Listen to this. Justin was still talking. The beauty is, once he's declared mentally incompetent, any attempt he makes to fight back just proves our point. The more he protests, the crazier he looks. Michael felt rage building in his chest. These weren't just thieves. They were hunters who enjoyed the destruction they caused. There's more, Elena said, reviewing intercepted emails on her laptop. They've done this before. She showed him a series of communications dating back 2 years, names of other businessmen, other successful companies that had mysteriously changed ownership. Thompson Construction, Pacific Systems, Cascade Medical Equipment, all successful family businesses that suddenly got transferred to shell companies controlled by Justin and Craig. What happened to the original owners? Psychiatric holds, competency hearings, stripped of assets and credibility. Elena's face was grim. Michael, you're not their first sufferer. You're just the biggest. Michael studied the names on the screen. Men like him, builders, creators, men who'd worked their entire lives to build something meaningful, only to have it stolen by parasites. How many? At least 8 that we can identify, probably more. What happened to them? Most disappeared. A few tried to fight back through the courts. But without evidence of conspiracy, they just looked like bitter ex-husbands making wild accusations. Michael felt something cold settle in his stomach. And their families? Wives got custody. Kids got turned against their fathers. Complete destruction. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. This wasn't just about Michael's company. It was about a systematic network designed to destroy successful men and steal their life's work. Elena, Michael said slowly, we're not just stopping a theft. We're stopping a criminal enterprise. Special Agent Patricia Morrison arrived at the Westin within 2 hours. She was Elena's former partner at the Bureau, now heading the white-collar crime division in Seattle. This is bigger than we thought, she said after reviewing the evidence. Wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, racketeering. If we can prove they've done this before, we're looking at RICO charges. Have they? Michael asked. Morrison consulted her laptop. Justin Rice has been involved in multiple cases. But this is the first time we have recordings of the actual conspiracy. Elena spread photographs across the hotel room desk. We've identified offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell companies in Delaware, a network of financial instruments designed to hide stolen assets. Morrison studied the photos. This is organized crime masquerading as civil litigation. How sophisticated is their operation? Very, Elena said. They have corrupt psychiatrists on payroll, attorneys who specialize in emergency custody cases, private investigators who manufacture evidence, even judges who've been compromised. Michael felt his world tilting. Judges? Morrison nodded grimly. We've been investigating unusual patterns in family court decisions, emergency custody orders that bypass normal procedures, competency hearings that ignore standard psychiatric protocols. How deep does this go? We're about to find out. Morrison made calls to assemble teams. We're coordinating raids on all their locations simultaneously, before they can destroy evidence or move money offshore. Within hours, FBI agents were positioning around multiple targets. Not just Justin's apartment and Nicolette's office, but the homes and businesses of a dozen co-conspirators across 3 states. Michael, Morrison said, when we move tomorrow, your life is going to change forever. Are you ready for that? Michael thought about Charlie, about the company he'd built, about the other men who'd lost everything to these hunters. I'm ready. Good, because once this starts, there's no going back. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He stood at the hotel window, watching Seattle's lights stretch to the horizon. Somewhere out there, Nicolette was probably celebrating with Justin, thinking they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. At dawn, the raids began. Michael watched from Daniel's office as FBI agents surrounded his house in Bellevue. News trucks arrived within minutes, drawn by police scanners and the spectacle of a wealthy neighborhood under siege. Nicolette emerged in handcuffs at 6:47 a.m., still in her silk pajamas. Her face was pale with shock as agents led her to a waiting vehicle. She looked directly at the news cameras, and Michael saw the exact moment she realized her life was over. Charlie stood in the doorway, confused and frightened. Michael's heart shattered watching his son witness his mother's arrest. Michael's phone rang. Daddy, why are there police here? I'm coming home, buddy. Right now. But before he could leave, Elena burst into Daniel's office. Michael, you need to see this. She activated a live feed from the FBI command center, multiple raids happening simultaneously across the Pacific Northwest. Justin Rice's apartment in Bellevue. Agents found computers, financial records, and a wall covered with photographs of potential sufferers, successful businessmen and their families, target lists, Craig Belmont's penthouse downtown. Teams discovered offshore banking documents, forged legal papers, and communication equipment used to coordinate the conspiracy. Dr. Morrison's psychiatric practice. Files on dozens of men who'd been falsely diagnosed as mentally incompetent. Payment records from shell companies, evidence of systematic fraud spanning years. But that's not all, Elena said. Watch this. The feed switched to a luxury estate in Tacoma. FBI agents were arresting a woman in her 50s. Well-dressed, sophisticated. She looked like someone's grandmother. Who is that? Martha Kellerman. She runs the operation that recruits the wives. Recruits them? They target successful marriages that are already under stress. Approach the wives at social events, charity functions, country clubs. Offer support, friendship, then gradually introduce the idea that their husbands are holding them back. Michael felt sick. Nicolette was recruited? We think so. Look at this. Elena showed him financial records, payments to Nicolette dating back 18 months, not large amounts. Just enough to buy expensive clothes, spa treatments, weekend trips with girlfriends. They groomed her, Elena said. Made her feel entitled to more than what she had, then introduced Justin as the solution to her problems. The realization hit Michael like a physical blow. Nicolette hadn't just betrayed him. She'd been systematically corrupted by professionals who specialized in destroying marriages. How many wives? He asked. We're still counting, but at least 20 across Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Michael thought about all those families, all those children who'd watched their mothers led away in handcuffs, all those men who'd lost everything because hunters had turned their wives against them. His phone rang again. Charlie. Daddy, I'm scared. I'll be right there. The drive to Bellevue felt endless. FBI vehicles lined his street. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks, some pointing, some filming with their phones. Michael's private nightmare had become public entertainment. He found Charlie in his bedroom, still in Batman pajamas, sitting on his bed with tears streaming down his face. Did Mommy do something bad? Michael sat beside his son. How do you explain systematic betrayal to a 10-year-old? Mommy made some very serious mistakes. Will she come back? Not for a long time. Did I help catch her? With my video? Michael pulled Charlie close. You helped Daddy learn the truth, but this isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. They sat together while FBI agents searched the house, looking for documents, computers, anything that might contain evidence of the conspiracy. Agent Morrison found Michael in the kitchen an hour later. We arrested Justin at his apartment, Craig Belmont at his office, plus 6 other conspirators in coordinated raids. What did you find? Evidence of the largest marriage fraud conspiracy in FBI history. Financial records showing stolen assets worth over $200 million. Communication logs documenting systematic recruitment of wives and corruption of public officials. Michael poured coffee with shaking hands. What about Charlie? He'll need therapy, professional counseling to help him understand what happened. But Michael, your son is the hero in this story. Without his video, we never would have uncovered the network. Michael looked out at his backyard, the swing set he'd built for Charlie's 5th birthday. The garden Nicolette had planted their first spring in the house. Evidence of a life that had been built on lies. His phone buzzed constantly. News outlets wanting interviews, business partners asking questions, employees worried about their jobs. By noon, the story was on every local news station. Marriage fraud conspiracy targets successful businessmen. But the biggest shock came when Elena arrived with new information. Michael, we found something else. The conspiracy reaches into the court system. She showed him arrest warrants for 2 family court judges. Both had been taking payments to fast-track custody cases and competency hearings. Judge Williams, who would have handled your psychiatric evaluation. Judge Patterson, who's been rubber-stamping emergency custody orders for the past 3 years. Michael felt the scope of the corruption expanding. How many cases were fixed? We're reviewing hundreds of family court decisions, emergency custody orders that bypassed normal procedures, competency hearings where men lost everything based on questionable psychiatric evaluations. And all those men, we're tracking them down. Some moved away in shame. Some took their own lives. Some are still fighting legal battles they can't win because the system was rigged against them. Michael thought about those broken men. fathers separated from their children, creators stripped of their life's work. Also, parasites like Justin Rice could get rich. Elena, we're not just sufferers. We're witnesses to systematic organized crime. Exactly. And now we're going to destroy it. Michael called an emergency meeting at Ender's engineering headquarters. 400 employees packed into the main conference room, faces filled with concern and confusion. You've all seen the news, Michael began. I want you to hear the truth from me. He explained the conspiracy. Not just the attempted theft of his company, but the discovery of a criminal network that had been destroying families across the Pacific Northwest. Your jobs are safe, he concluded. Our contracts are secure. But more than that, we're going to help the FBI bring down every person involved in this conspiracy. The room erupted in applause. His employees weren't just relieved, they were angry, ready to fight. After the meeting, Elena pulled Michael aside. There's something else you need to know. What? We intercepted communications between Justin and contacts in other states. This isn't just a Pacific Northwest operation. Heat filled Michael's chest. How big is it? National. Maybe international. We've identified similar patterns in California, Texas, Florida, and New York. The scope was staggering. A nationwide network of marriage hunters, systematically destroying successful families and stealing their wealth. Elena, how many men have lost everything to these people? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Michael felt rage building in his chest, pure, focused anger that demanded justice. What do we do? Elena smiled grimly. We go to war. The federal courthouse in downtown Seattle became the center of the largest organized crime trial in Washington state history. 37 defendants, 15 attorneys, 4 psychiatrists, 2 judges, multiple offshore bankers and corporate raiders. Michael sat in the gallery every day, watching his wife and her co-conspirators face justice. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They presented evidence of a criminal enterprise that had operated for over 5 years, stealing assets worth more than $400 million from successful families across multiple states. Lead prosecutor Sarah Martinez laid out the conspiracy during opening arguments. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about the systematic destruction of the American family. The defendants didn't just steal money. They destroyed marriages, separated children from their fathers, and corrupted the very legal system designed to protect families. She showed a chart connecting all the conspirators. At the center was Justin Rice, but the network extended far beyond him. The defendants operated like the mafia. They had recruiters who targeted vulnerable wives, corrupt psychiatrists who provided false diagnoses, compromised judges who rubber-stamped their fraud, and offshore bankers who hid the stolen assets. The prosecution presented evidence methodically, financial records showing payments to co-conspirators, communication logs documenting recruitment strategies, testimony from sufferers who'd lost everything. Michael testified on the third day. He explained how he'd built his company, how he'd discovered the conspiracy, how he'd worked with the FBI to expose the network. Mr. Enders, Prosecutor Martinez asked, did you ever suspect your wife was involved in criminal activity? No, I trusted her completely. When did you first realize the scope of the conspiracy? When we found evidence that other men had lost their companies using the same methods? How did that make you feel? Michael looked at Nicolette. She sat at the defense table in a conservative blue suit, hair pulled back, looking like the attorney she'd once been. But her eyes were different now, hollow, defeated. Angry, he said. Not just for what they did to me, but for what they did to other families. The defense tried multiple strategies. Justin's attorney claimed entrapment. Nicolette's lawyer painted her as a sufferer of manipulation. Craig's team argued insufficient evidence, but the prosecution had recordings, financial documents, sufferer testimony, a paper trail that connected every conspirator to the criminal enterprise. The most damaging testimony came from Martha Kellerman, the recruiter who'd turned state's evidence. I targeted wives at country clubs, charity events, social gatherings, she testified. I looked for women who seemed unhappy with their marriages, who felt their husbands didn't appreciate them. How did you approach them? Friendship first. I'd compliment their clothes, ask about their lives, offer support, make them feel special. Then what? I'd gradually introduce doubts about their husbands, point out how hard they worked, how little time they spent at home, make the wives feel neglected. And then, I'd introduce them to Justin, charming, successful, attentive. everything their husbands supposedly weren't. Martinez showed photographs of the recruitment process. Martha at charity galas, talking to well-dressed women, building relationships, planting seeds of discontent. How many wives did you recruit? 43 over 5 years? The courtroom gasped. What happened to their families? Martha's voice cracked. Destroyed. Every single one. Michael watched the jury's faces. Shock, disgust, anger. They understood they weren't just witnessing theft. They were seeing the systematic destruction of the family unit itself. Dr. Morrison's testimony was equally damaging. The corrupt psychiatrist had provided false diagnoses for dozens of men, declaring them mentally incompetent based on manufactured evidence. How much were you paid for each false diagnosis? The prosecutor asked. $50,000. How many false diagnoses did you provide? 87. The math was staggering. Over $4 million in payments to just one corrupt psychiatrist. But the most shocking testimony came from Judge Williams, who'd been cooperating with prosecutors since his arrest. I was paid to fast-track custody cases, he admitted. Emergency orders that bypassed normal procedures. Competency hearings that ignored standard protocols. How much were you paid? $200,000 per case. How many cases? 34. Nearly $7 million in payments to corrupt the family court system. Elena testified about the technical aspects of the conspiracy, the sophisticated financial networks, the communication systems, the international scope of the operation. This wasn't amateur crime, she concluded. This was an organized criminal enterprise operating at the highest levels of sophistication. Charlie testified on video, recorded in a child-friendly environment with counselors present. He explained how he'd made the video that exposed the conspiracy. I just wanted to show people what different jobs were like, he said. I didn't know Uncle Justin was stealing from Daddy. Are you angry at your mom? Charlie considered this carefully. I'm sad. She chose money instead of family. The defense attorneys tried to attack Charlie's credibility, but the judge shut them down. A 10-year-old boy had unwittingly documented the greatest marriage fraud conspiracy in FBI history. His innocence made the betrayal even more shocking. Nicolette testified in her own defense. She claimed Justin had manipulated her, threatened her, forced her to participate. I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't cooperate, she said. What kind of threats did he make? He said he would destroy Michael's business anyway, that if I helped, at least Charlie and I would be protected. But the prosecution had recordings of Nicolette's conversations, her voice planning Michael's destruction, her excitement about stealing his company. Mrs. Enders, Prosecutor Martinez said during cross-examination, in this recorded conversation, you sound excited about transferring your husband's assets. Does that sound like someone acting under duress? I was protecting my future. By stealing your husband's life's work? I thought we deserved more. More than what? More than what Michael was providing. The admission hung in the air. Nicolette hadn't been forced to participate. She'd chosen to destroy her family because she felt entitled to more wealth. The jury deliberated for 12 hours over 2 days. Michael waited in Daniel's office, watching news coverage of the trial. Legal experts called it the most significant organized crime prosecution in Washington state history. Finally, his phone rang. We have a verdict. The courtroom was packed. Sufferers, families, media, legal observers. Michael sat in the front row with Charlie and Elena. Have you reached a verdict? Judge Thompson asked. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, how do you find guilty? On the charge of racketeering, guilty. On the charge of money laundering, guilty. Guilty verdicts across the board for all 37 defendants. Justin Rice, 25 years federal prison, complete forfeiture of assets. Craig Belmont, 18 years federal prison, forfeiture of all assets involved in the conspiracy. Nicolette Enders, 15 years federal prison, loss of law license, supervised release for 10 years. Dr. Morrison, 20 years federal prison, loss of medical license. Judge Williams, 12 years federal prison, loss of judicial pension. Martha Kellerman, 10 years federal prison, cooperation agreement for reduced sentence. Michael felt no satisfaction watching the sentences. Justice wasn't about revenge, it was about prevention. But he did feel relief. The network that had destroyed so many families was finally broken. After the sentencing, Agent Morrison approached Michael. We couldn't have done this without you. What happens now? We're working with prosecutors in other states, using your case as a model to investigate similar conspiracies. This network was national, Michael. What you exposed here is going to help us save families across the country. Michael looked at Charlie, who was talking to Elena about the engineering principles behind the courthouse's architecture. His son was going to be okay, scarred by what he'd witnessed, but not broken. Agent Morrison, how many other men are out there? Men who lost everything to these conspiracies but never got justice? We're finding them. Using the financial records seized from the defendants, we're tracking down sufferers from coast to coast. Some of them will get their assets back. Some will be reunited with their children. Michael thought about those broken fathers, men who'd given up hope, men who'd been destroyed by systematic betrayal and had no way to fight back. I want to help them. How? Michael looked at Elena. We're going to make sure this never happens again. 1 year after the trials, Enders Vasquez Corporate Solutions occupied an entire floor of the Columbia Tower. What had started as Michael's quest for justice had grown into a nationwide operation dedicated to exposing marriage fraud conspiracies. We have 43 active cases, Elena reported during their weekly briefing, spanning 16 states. The patterns are identical to what we found here. Michael studied the case files spread across the conference table. Software executives in California, oil executives in Texas, medical device manufacturers in Florida, all successful family men targeted by sophisticated criminal networks. What's our success rate? 97%. We've prevented asset theft worth over $2 billion, saved 68 families from destruction. Charlie, now 13, sat at the table working on homework while his father and Elena planned their operations. Prison visits with Nicolette had stopped completely. Charlie's choice. Dad, there's something I don't understand, Charlie said, looking up from his math textbook. What's that? Why do people try to steal instead of building their own things? Michael considered the question. Because stealing is easier than creating, but it's also empty. When you steal something, you can never really own it. Like Mom stole our family? The question hit Michael like a physical blow. Yeah, buddy, like that. Charlie nodded and returned to his homework. At 13, he'd developed a philosophical understanding of human nature that most adults never achieved. Michael's phone rang. New client, tech executive in Austin whose wife was exhibiting suspicious behavior. Late-night phone calls, unexplained absences, sudden interest in their financial accounts. Set up the monitoring, Michael told Elena. Full surveillance package. Already in progress. I've identified the attorney she's been meeting with. Same pattern as the Seattle network. How is that possible? We destroyed the network. Elena pulled up a map of the United States. Red dots marked confirmed fraud cases. Yellow dots marked suspected cases. Blue dots marked cases they'd successfully prevented. Hydra, she said. Cut off one head, 2 more appear. The Seattle network was just one branch of a national operation. Michael stared at the map. Hundreds of dots, hundreds of families under attack by marriage hunters. Elena, we're not just fighting individual cases. We're fighting a systematic attack on the American family. Exactly, and we're winning. Their success had attracted attention from federal law enforcement. Agent Morrison called weekly for updates. The FBI was using their investigative methods to build cases across the country. But it had also attracted attention from the criminals. Michael's home security system detected the intrusion at 2:17 a.m. Motion sensors triggered throughout the property. Cameras showed 3 figures in dark clothing approaching the house. Michael grabbed his phone and the emergency panic button Elena had installed. Charlie, get in the safe room. Now. Dad, what's happening? Just go, lock the door, don't come out until I tell you. Michael activated the security protocol Elena had designed. Floodlights illuminated the property. Sirens blared. Automated voice warned the intruders they were being recorded and police had been notified. The figures retreated, but not before one of them spray-painted a message on Michael's garage door. Stop digging, or you'll regret. Police arrived within minutes. So did Elena, wearing tactical gear and carrying equipment that definitely wasn't legal for civilians. How fast did you get here? Michael asked. I was already in the neighborhood. We've been monitoring chatter about retaliation against you. What kind of chatter? The networks you've been destroying have put a price on your head. $500,000 for information. $2 million for elimination. Michael felt cold fear settle in his stomach. They're targeting my family. Which is why we're moving you to a secure location tonight. Elena had prepared for this possibility. Safe house in the mountains. Security team. New identities if necessary. But Michael refused to run. No, I'm not hiding from these parasites. If they want a war, they can have one. Michael, they're not just thieves anymore. They're organized criminals with resources and connections. They've corrupted judges, police, politicians. Then we expose them all. Elena stared at him. Do you understand what you're saying? If we go after the entire network, we're taking on billions of dollars in criminal enterprise. People have disappeared for less. Michael thought about Charlie, about the other children who'd watched their fathers destroyed by systematic betrayal, about the families still under attack by marriage hunters. Elena, what we're fighting isn't just crime. It's evil, pure, calculated evil that destroys everything good in society. If we don't stop it, who will? Elena smiled grimly. Then we're going to need bigger tools. 3 months later, Michael and Elena sat in a secure conference room beneath FBI headquarters in Quantico. Around the table were agents from every major field office, prosecutors from the Department of Justice, and intelligence analysts from multiple agencies. The evidence you've provided has helped us map the largest marriage fraud conspiracy in American history, Agent Morrison announced. What we thought was isolated to the Pacific Northwest is actually a sophisticated criminal enterprise operating in 43 states. She activated a wall-mounted display showing a network diagram. Hundreds of names connected by lines representing communication, financial transfers, and operational relationships. At the center of the network is a man named Victor Torino, former Wall Street attorney who disappeared after a SEC investigation 8 years ago. He's been organizing marriage fraud operations from a compound in the Bahamas. Michael studied the diagram. How big is the operation? Conservative estimate? They've stolen over $8 billion from American families over the past decade. The number was staggering, enough to fund small countries. How many families destroyed? Morrison consulted her files. At least 2,000 confirmed cases, probably double that number we haven't identified yet. Elena leaned forward. What's the operational structure? Regional networks organized like franchises. Each region has recruiters who target wives, attorneys who handle legal manipulation, psychiatrists who provide false diagnoses, and judges who fast-track fraudulent court orders. And the profits? Funneled through offshore accounts, shell, companies, and cryptocurrency exchanges. Then redistributed to network operators based on performance metrics. Michael felt sick. They're treating family destruction like a business because it is a business, a very profitable one. The FBI had been building their case for months, using evidence from Michael's investigation. Wiretaps, financial surveillance, international cooperation with banking authorities. We're ready to move, Morrison announced. Coordinated raids across the country, but we need your help. How? The network knows you're investigating them. They're expecting law enforcement action, but they're not expecting you to walk into their headquarters and record evidence of their operations. Elena's face went pale. You want Michael to infiltrate the Bahamas compound? With full FBI support, undercover operation. Michael would pose as a potential investor looking to franchise the operation in new territories. Michael felt adrenaline surge through his system. How dangerous. Extremely. If they suspect you're working with law enforcement, you'll disappear permanently. Michael thought about Charlie, about the promise he'd made to always come home, about the thousands of families still under attack. What would we need to do? Morrison outlined the operation. Michael would approach the network through a corrupt attorney they'd identified in Miami, claim he wanted to establish marriage fraud operations in the Midwest, offer to invest millions in exchange for operational knowledge. The goal is to record evidence of their systematic approach, document their training methods, recruitment strategies, corruption networks, evidence we can use to prosecute the entire enterprise under RICO statutes. And if something goes wrong, extraction team standing by. But Michael, if you're blown, we might not be able to reach you in time. Elena grabbed Michael's arm. This is insane. You're not trained for undercover operations. But I'm motivated, and I understand their business model better than anyone. Morrison nodded. That's exactly why it might work. You're not acting. You really are someone who's been destroyed by their network and wants revenge. Michael looked around the table. Federal agents, prosecutors, intelligence analysts, all focused on one goal, destroying the network that had been systematically destroying American families. When do we start? Tomorrow. Michael sat in the opulent office of attorney Harrison Blackwell in downtown Miami. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Biscayne Bay. Expensive art covered the walls, everything designed to project success and power. Blackwell was in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars. He'd been recruited by the network 5 years ago after his third bankruptcy. Mr. Enders, Blackwell said, reviewing Michael's fabricated financial documents. I understand you're interested in diversifying your investment portfolio. I'm interested in revenge, Michael said bluntly. My wife destroyed my marriage and tried to steal my company. I want to do the same thing to other men. Blackwell's eyes lit up. Revenge can be very profitable. Michael leaned forward. I have access to $40 million in liquid capital. I want to establish operations in the Midwest, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, industrial cities with successful men who need to be taught humility. That's a significant investment. You'd be looking at franchise fees, operational costs, recruitment expenses. Money isn't the issue. Results are. Blackwell made notes on a legal pad. Have you considered the psychological satisfaction of the work? There's something deeply rewarding about bringing down men who think they're untouchable. Michael felt disgust, but kept his expression neutral. That's exactly what I want. Excellent. I think you'd be perfect for our organization. Blackwell activated a secure communication system. Within minutes, he was connected to the Bahamas compound. Victor, I have someone you need to meet. A voice crackled through the speakers. Refined, educated, absolutely cold. Mr. Enders, Harrison tells me you're interested in joining our network. I'm interested in destroying marriages and getting rich doing it. Victor Torino laughed. A man after my own heart. How soon can you come to Nassau? Tonight, if necessary. Excellent. I'll send transportation. After the call, Blackwell provided Michael with detailed instructions. Flight to Nassau on a private jet. Ground transportation to the compound. Cover story for customs and immigration. One warning, Blackwell said. Victor is brilliant but paranoid. If he suspects you're not legitimate, you'll never leave the island. Michael nodded. Understood. That evening, Michael boarded a Gulfstream G650 at Miami International. FBI surveillance teams tracked the flight, but once he reached Bahamian airspace, he was on his own. The compound was located on a private island 30 miles from Nassau. Armed guards met Michael at the helicopter landing pad. They searched him thoroughly, but found nothing suspicious. The FBI's technical team had hidden recording devices in items that appeared completely innocent. Victor Torino waited in a massive plantation-style mansion overlooking crystal blue waters. He was younger than Michael expected, maybe 45, with the lean build of a long-distance runner and eyes like a shark. Mr. Enders, welcome to paradise. Thank you for seeing me. Harrison says you want revenge against your ex-wife. I want revenge against all wives. The institution of marriage has become a weapon women use to destroy successful men. Victor smiled. You understand the fundamental problem. Women have been conditioned to believe they deserve wealth they didn't earn. We simply help them achieve their goals while redirecting that wealth to more deserving recipients. Meaning us. Precisely. Victor led Michael on a tour of the compound. State-of-the-art communications center, training facilities for recruiters and attorneys, even a mock courtroom where they practiced fraudulent legal proceedings. We operate like any other business, Victor explained. Marketing, sales, operations, finance. The only difference is our product is the systematic destruction of marriage. In the communications center, Michael saw the scope of the operation, monitors showing active cases across the United States, financial dashboards tracking stolen assets in real time, performance metrics for regional operators. How much revenue annually? Michael asked. Last year, we transferred $1.2 billion from targets to our network. This year, we're on track for $1.8 billion. The numbers were staggering. Industrial-scale theft disguised as civil litigation. What's your profit margin? 60% after operational costs and payoffs to judges and psychiatrists. Victor showed Michael recruitment training videos. Professional quality productions teaching women how to identify successful targets, build emotional connections, and gradually introduce the idea of divorce and asset seizure. We call it emotional warfare, Victor explained. Much more effective than traditional theft. The sufferers actually thank us for destroying them. Michael watched footage of recruitment in action. Beautiful women approaching successful men at social events, building relationships, gaining trust, then introducing doubt about their marriages. The beauty of the system, Victor continued, is that it's self-perpetuating. Each successful operation provides us with new recruiters, new contacts in the legal system, and new intelligence about potential targets. How do you identify targets? Multiple methods: financial databases, social media analysis, public record searches. We maintain profiles on every successful businessman in America worth more than $10 million. Victor pulled up a computer screen showing target profiles, photographs, financial information, family details, psychological assessments. We know more about these men than their wives do. Michael saw his own profile, detailed analysis of his business, his marriage, his vulnerabilities. They'd been studying him for years before Nicolette was recruited. When did you first identify me as a target? 3 years ago. But we waited until your company reached optimal value before activating the operation. And my wife? Recruited 18 months ago at a charity event in Seattle. Textbook recruitment. She was feeling neglected, entitled to more luxury. Perfect psychological profile for our purposes. Michael felt rage building but kept his expression neutral. What would it take to establish operations in the Midwest? $5 million initial investment, another $5 million in operational funds, plus ongoing percentages of recovered assets. I can do that, Victor smiled. Excellent. We'll start with Chicago. I have the perfect recruiter in mind. Over the next 3 days, Michael was immersed in the network's operations. Training sessions on psychological manipulation, technical briefings on financial fraud, strategic planning sessions for expanding into new territories. He met the other regional operators, men like him who'd been destroyed by the network, then recruited to destroy others, some motivated by revenge, others by pure greed, all completely corrupted. The most chilling part was their enthusiasm. They genuinely enjoyed destroying families, took pride in their ability to turn wives against husbands, celebrated each successful operation like a sporting victory. On his final night at the compound, Victor hosted a celebration dinner. 23 regional operators from across the United States. They toasted their success and planned future operations. Gentlemen, Victor raised his glass, to the systematic destruction of the American family, to wealth redistribution through emotional warfare, to the complete elimination of traditional marriage as a social institution. Michael raised his glass with the others. To revenge. But inside he was calculating, memorizing faces, recording conversations, building the case that would destroy them all. The next morning, Michael flew back to Miami with detailed operational plans, contact lists, and financial procedures. Everything the FBI needed to dismantle the network completely. But he also carried something else. The knowledge that the conspiracy was even larger than they'd imagined. The network wasn't just stealing money. They were systematically destroying the fundamental building blocks of American society. And they had to be stopped. 6 months later, Michael stood in the FBI command center as the largest coordinated law enforcement operation in American history reached its climax. Eagle One is in position. Radio chatter filled the room as teams reported from across the country. Bravo team ready for entry. Charlie unit standing by. Delta Force has eyes on the compound. 200 federal agents. 50 simultaneous raids. Targets in 43 states plus the Bahamas compound. The entire network would be taken down in a single coordinated strike. All units, this is command. Execute, execute, execute. Michael watched on multiple screens as teams moved against targets simultaneously. FBI agents storming the Miami office where he'd met Harrison Blackwell. DEA teams hitting corrupt psychiatrists. U.S. Marshals arresting compromised judges. The centerpiece was the attack on Victor Torino's compound. Navy SEALs approached by sea while FBI tactical teams landed by helicopter. The island was surrounded, all escape routes cut off. Compound secured, came the report. Multiple suspects in custody. Elena grabbed Michael's arm. We did it! But Michael felt no celebration, just grim satisfaction that justice was finally being served. The raids yielded devastating evidence. Financial records documenting billions in stolen assets. Communication logs showing coordination across the network. Video footage of training sessions where operatives learned to destroy families. Most importantly, they found the complete sufferer database. Every family that had been targeted, every marriage that had been destroyed, every child separated from their father. The numbers were staggering. Over 3,000 families destroyed, $8 billion stolen, hundreds of men driven to bankruptcy or complete social isolation. Victor Torino was arrested while trying to escape in a speedboat. The man who'd built an empire destroying American families was pulled from the water by Coast Guard divers. Harrison Blackwell was found in his Miami office, shredding documents. He destroyed evidence, but not before FBI computer specialists recovered everything from his hard drives. The corrupt judges were arrested in their courtrooms. Dr. Morrison-style psychiatrists dragged from their offices. Recruiters apprehended at country clubs and charity events where they'd been hunting for new sufferers. The network that had taken decades to build was dismantled in a single day. The trials lasted 2 years. Federal courtrooms across the country processed hundreds of defendants. The evidence was overwhelming. Recorded conversations, financial records, sufferer testimony. Victor Torino received life in federal prison without possibility of parole. Organized criminal enterprise, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, wire fraud. The charges filled 17 pages. Harrison Blackwell got 40 years. The corrupt judges received sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years. The psychiatrists lost their licenses and received prison terms up to 25 years. Most satisfying for Michael were the sentences for the regional operators. The men who'd been recruited to destroy other families after being destroyed themselves. Instead of choosing to help other sufferers, they'd chosen to become hunters. No mercy for any of them. But the real victory was the recovery operation. Using seized financial records, the FBI tracked down stolen assets hidden in offshore accounts, shell companies, and cryptocurrency wallets. Over $6 billion was recovered and returned to sufferers. Families got their homes back. Men were reunited with their children. Businesses were restored to their rightful owners. Michael established a Sufferer Assistance Foundation, using his portion of the recovered assets, counseling services for destroyed families, legal assistance for men fighting to regain custody, educational programs to help people recognize and resist recruitment attempts. Most importantly, they created a database accessible to law enforcement and family courts. Red flags to watch for. Patterns of behavior that indicated marriage fraud in progress. Warning systems to protect families before they could be destroyed. 5 years after Charlie's school project exposed the conspiracy, Michael stood on the deck of the new Puget Sound Bridge. Elena beside him, 8 months pregnant with their second child. Charlie, now 18 and headed to MIT to study engineering, working on his laptop. "Will this one last forever?" Elena asked, looking at the bridge. "Nothing lasts forever," Michael said. "But if we build it right, it'll outlast all of us." His phone buzzed. Text from Agent Morrison. "New case. Tech executive in Austin thinks his wife is being recruited. Same patterns." Michael deleted the message. "Elena, we're never going to completely stop this. There will always be hunters targeting successful families, but we can make it harder, make the cost higher than the profit." Charlie looked up from his laptop. "Dad, I've been thinking about my college thesis project." "What about it?" "I want to build an AI system that can identify marriage fraud conspiracies before they succeed. Pattern recognition, financial analysis, behavioral prediction." Michael smiled at his son. At 18, Charlie understood something most adults never learned. The best defense against evil was preparation and vigilance. "That's a great idea, buddy. Will you help me?" Michael looked at his new family. Elena carrying their child. Charlie grown into a young man who wanted to protect others from what had happened to him. The company he'd rebuilt stronger than before. The foundation helping other sufferers recover their lives. He'd lost a wife, but gained something more valuable. The knowledge that he'd fought evil and won. That he'd protected not just his own family, but thousands of others. "Yeah," he said. "I'll help you."